Hello and welcome to episode 139 of Just Keep Writing,
a podcast for writers
by writers
to keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I'm Nick.
I'm Brent.
I'm LP.
And I'm Will.
All right. So today we have the pleasure of talking with DaVaun Sanders. Me and DaVaun go way back. It's almost, I don't know, shoot, this has been almost it's been almost 10 years, honestly. Yeah. It has been almost 10 years because I first met DaVaun when I was first starting to really take the publishing journey seriously, and it was right about when I first moved to California. So yeah, almost 10 years. So DaVaun's just an amazing writer of everything science fiction and fantasy. Me and him worked together for many years as part of the Fiyah Lit Magazine crew. We won the Hugo together, which was amazing. DaVaun is also now our editor at the magazine. I stepped away, but he's still there running a great ship. And we're going to be talking about his middle grade, which I just like with Nia, I get to say I was there, from inception. So I think we actually, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, DaVaun, but I think you actually started writing this the first time. Well, no, not the first time. I think it was the first time the whole Fiyah magazine team got together and actually met in person, I think.
That's it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that was back 2017, 18. I don't remember. Maybe it was
19, maybe.
19,
I don't know. My time, looking backwards, it doesn't ever since COVID. It's just I don't know. I don't know where the years go, but yeah, it was somewhere in there.
It was somewhere in there.
when we was in Atlanta. That was that spot.
Yes, I remember, and I think you were telling me about it when we were in the lounge hanging out at the hotel. I think the night before everyone departed. So I literally got to be there from inception to now actually being a real live book. And yeah, I'm thrilled because not only that this book gets to exist in the world, but I'm thrilled that it gets to exist while your kids are the age that they are. So also for the audience, I've known DaVaun's babies from the time they were like babies. So so it also just kind of warms my heart that I get to see this book exist when they are the age that they are. And I have a funny story about his daughter, but we'll probably we'll get to that later.
We'll have to make time for that one. But welcome to the show, DaVaun.
Thank y'all so much. It is just an honor to be here. It's surreal to be here too. It's funny when you get to you have this weird thing where it's you build some camaraderie with folks that you don't even when you listen to a podcast. Because typically, what I do with y'all and with a lot of other podcasts is just is binge it. So I'm out doing yard work and then just run through 4 or 5 episodes. So it's just talking to the folks, to the voices I know so well, pretending we're old friends when we're meeting for the first time. I'm happy to be here, thrilled. I'm so grateful to Will for being this very just loving avalanche of you're coming on the fucking show at some point, right? And I think I'd made a promise to Brent way back because he'd invited me way back when y'all first kicked it off. But I was like, nah, I ain't got nothing to do. I ain't got nothing to really talk about outside of the magazine. So, now having a project, and I'd always had it in my mind before I do anything, I'm coming to see y'all. So I'm glad to be here.
Ah, that's awesome.
We're so excited you're here finally. And I saw that LP annoying. Okay. Persistent. I would prefer. Okay. Persistent.
If I had wanted it to be said on the podcast, I would have said it out loud.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I just, I can't hold back. Okay, so we're going to start with our first question, DaVaun, that we ask all our guests. So I'd like you to describe in 3 words your writing career.
Oh, that's great. I would say...
And they don't have to be connected. It can just be three words.
Yeah, whatever comes to your mind first.
Yeah, that's, I appreciate y'all saying that. Like, I didn't like think about this, like, a thousand, like trying to like out podcast the podcast gurus. But I definitely thought about this. My 3 words are community, perseverance, and if I can get the pronunciation correct on this, unfuckwitableness. That would be my 3.
I like that. I like that.
I like it.
All right, I'm loving all these words.
So let's unpack
I just like
those.
that you're ready for the question because we've interviewed each other and everybody is blindsided every time. It's hilarious.
I'm always like, wow, I should have been prepared for this.
I hate not being prepared. It's a thing of mine. Anyway.
Talk to us about those 3 words. We're going to unpack them. So community. Talk to me why you picked that word.
For sure. I think there's a lot of different facets to that for me. When I look at my personal writing journey, even just with what Brent shared, I think all of us as writers, we have those, those people that we meet along the way, the people that you come up with, as they say, that are indispensable to who I am as a writer, to, the decisions that I made, the markets that I've gone for, the, just everything that goes into, just surviving such a difficult industry and getting to a place where I could be, have the level of success that I have and continue to keep going. It's hilarious, with a lot of this stuff, we have these stories about like when we were first starting out and like how excited we were and, what we would dream of. And it's like, we're living our dreams right now, like with a lot of that stuff. And I know, for me personally, there's a lot of, I can't tell you how many times that I quit and I was like, hey, Brent, I'm going to hang it up, or just talking to anybody in my circle where it's just like, I'm fucking done. I got another rejection. And this was the one that said, you're not cut out for this, kid. You need to do something different. And to have people to rely on to, kind of kick those voices out of your head and remind you who you are, has been indispensable to my career. I think on the flip side of that, when we talk about community, it can't go without saying, like, not only, we as writers, with our very, all of our nuances and everything strange that we do, but the people that we want to reach, that's the other side of the, the coin. Where I'm at in this stage of my journey, like with middle grade, that community of readers, the kids whose lives I want to impact, the stories that I want to tell, the imaginations that I want to influence, that's a very important part of, why I do what I do, particularly at this level and, at this age range, because I wasn't always thought I was built for middle grade, but kind of grew into it. Thanks in a large part to people who have, given me that influence and given me a nudge in that direction. So I think community, not only for us, in the craft that we're all pursuing together, but in the people that we're going to reach and hopefully readers and fans, that we're going to meet and get to influence along the way.
Nice.
I love that. And what about perseverance?
Oh man. I mean, that's just like, there's so much that goes into just fostering a culture of success with any pursuit that you're going to have in this industry. Like, I think it's funny because it's like when you're first starting out, you're like, whew, okay, I hit the submit button and that's a win, right? If that's like your very first thing, it's weird, as you build layers and levels to your career and having to kind of unplug from your present day, all the challenges that you're dealing with whatever stage you at, and just kind of get back to that first, like, hey, did I get the 50 words or the 500 words or whatever the fuck, like whatever I said I was going to do that day, just that kind of like essential building block that we all do as writers write, but as we go along and develop in our careers and have all these different hurdles and we continue to move the goalposts on what success looks like and all these different things. I think just having that sense of I'm gonna push through this, I'm gonna get to my next thing, like whatever that is, it's essential to any level of success with all the forces arrayed against us.
And the last word, which I'm going to mess up. So, unfuckableness? Is that what you said?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that hit right. Unfuckwitableness.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what it was.
I think that's just kind of like like for me personally, like I you know, there's so much stuff that we face, so much stuff, you know, even if you just, you know, if you dare to log on Twitter in the last month or the last hour, just see like the nonsense that's out there. There's got to be a place that you retreat to in your mind or your coffee shop or whatever it is, where you are just regardless of everything that's going on out there, I'm going to push through this. So I guess it's closely related to perseverance, but it's a more of like a, not what I'm going to do, but just more of a mentality that you have to have of just, you know, letting things slide off and continuing to do what you set out to do.
Amazing. And
Start using
so,
that word.
I know, right? Why don't you give us a pitch for your debut and kind of tell the listeners a little bit about it before we dive in?
Oh, for sure. Let me go ahead and listeners, I'm not even going to pretend like this isn't written down, because if I tried to do it off the dome, I would mess it up. So Keynan Masters and the Peerless Magic Crew is a middle grade fantasy, my debut that came out in October of last year, 2023. So Keynan is a young poet. He's in love with writing. He ends up attending this fancy schmancy art school, the Peerless Academy. Not that he needs any help with his rhymes, according to him, but because there are these mysterious storms threatening his neighborhood, and Peerless is the only place where he can find out how to stop them. He makes new friends, a dancer and an artist, and together they uncover that Peerless isn't just some stuffy, boring school. It's hiding a dangerous secret. The truth is that magic is real, but it's been corrupted with scary consequences for anyone who tries to harness it. They realize that their art reacts with this broken magic, and if they work together and create together, they can heal it. But they've got to learn fast, because the same forces behind those strange storms have set their sights on Peerless.
I love it. And so my first question is, you know, why middle grade?
Yeah, middle grade for me was, you know, it's wild that I was here. I think my initial offerings, like when I was first like really getting into writing, was more young adults, and then some adult stuff, like primarily through short fiction. I have to give a lot of credit to Alicia Dow, who was a mentor of mine a few years back. And when I was working on a different project, she had it was a young adult science fiction, like alien invasion story, and she, for reasons that I will never know and always be grateful for, decided to take me under her wing and really whip that manuscript into shape. And as we were going along, she was just like, "Yo, you really you could make this as a middle grade, and I think it would be equally, you know, if not more compelling." And we, you know, after making that decision, like went back and retooled a YA into middle grade. And, you know, at that point, I had taken it out on submission as a young adult the year before. And then after retooling it, like it got like significantly a much better bump for like DV Pit and, you know, different places, and then cold queries and that whatnot. Didn't get didn't give me representation or anything, but it was just something where it was just like, this is really a space that I, you know, feel like I'm finding a voice for. So the next project that I had after that, you know, project kind of, you know, sputtered out was Keynan. And, you know, getting to tackle something where I'm not kind of retooling and retrofitting it. Like if any of y'all have done that for, you know, trying to change a voice drastically or go from one age group to the next, it was a lot. It was like a skill set that I wasn't, had to develop along the way. So getting to start something that was purely middle grade and just have it be that from inception was like a really, exciting place to work with. Coincidentally, as Brent alluded to, you know, my own munchkins are currently 9. So when I first started drafting this, so they would have been like 5. And the idea of getting to share selfishly, a selfish idea, like, yeah, Dad, we love all your shit. It's perfect. They're just going to do that, right? But the idea of writing not just for my kids, but just for kids at that age, that's 8 to 12 years old is when I, way back many moons and many careers ago, had worked a lot with youth, and I'd always found like that space of just like a really sweet space to work with kids where they're still open. They're not necessarily trying to be cool and all that stuff. And you can still like have a little bit of influence with them in a positive way. So that just felt like a good space with this project and with the kind of book that I wanted to write. And it turned out well. Like I just was able to nail the voice and really take it forward. A little too scary in spots, like where I had to dial it back, I think, early on. But that was just kind of those things that you learn along the way as you're trying to like really settle into like the nuances of an age group or a genre.
So I guess I want to kind of go back, and then Marshall, you can ask your question.
Okay.
I want to go back to when you were a kid. Did writing this book, did you think about what you were reading when you were a kid or what you wanted to see? Like, what has your relationship been with reading versus writing?
That's a good question. I think with me as a kid, I was a kid who would, latchkey 80s kid. I remember always clearing out just rows. Like I'd come home with a row, like a grocery bag full of books as a kid to just devour, because that was like the main thing I had to do, like on some days. With reading for me as a child, it was just more of a space of, just imagination. I grew up in a small, primarily, predominantly white town where there was just like a row of any, Black themed or African themed stories. It was probably like maybe as long as my arm. So like, knock those out like relatively quickly. Yeah, I and it was funny because I'd always have the library fines, and my mom would be pretty, irritated about those, but she'd always pay them, so I could always go back. So that was a blessing. I think being the kind of kid that loves books and everything, got through stuff with my age group quickly, and I had my Uncle Joe in Chicago, knew that I was a reader and knew what I was into, and my first big boy book, I think, was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. So, being a dinosaur nut, as a kid, and then, trying to tackle like, genome sequences and everything else, kind of, some good stuff for like, middle school or whenever I was in, maybe hopefully punching above my weight class, so to speak. That was kind of like how everything worked out for me as a child. When I look at Keynan Masters, I think this would have been a book that I yanked immediately as a child on the shelf, because there wouldn't have been anything like it. I think we can say that about so many of our titles that are out now, whether you're looking at Kwame Mbalia with the Tristan Strong series, if you're looking at Danielle Clayton's The Marvelers, there's and I'm doing a disservice because there's so many more. It's like we're just like living in rich times where, if you're a young Black kid, if you're a young person of color, it's like you've got a lot of options out there, and that's it's beautiful to add a little piece into the pantheon we're growing. And I think I'm not necessarily writing for that kid, because that kid, he's grown up. It's fine, but it's just getting to pass that on to the next generation, and hopefully becoming somebody else's favorite and something that somebody else devours. That's a really satisfying thing for this age group.
That's awesome. Marshall?
Yeah, I was just going to speak on something you said a little bit earlier. I had a similar experience growing up, small, kind of mostly white community, and I just read whatever I could, and that's how I spent my time. And you're right, there was nothing like this. I feel like that was available, and I just love that this is available now. And this is what I'm getting to. My youngest is at the top end of that age range. He's 12. And I'm already giving him this. I just think he's going to love it. So thank you for writing it. But I'm curious because you said something about how you had to tone back some of the scariness of it. Is there any specific spots that you had to kind of tinker with? Because there are some moments that I'm just like, oh crap, this is getting intense for these kids. So I'm just curious, like, I don't know. I there's so many parts where I was just like, this is kind of freaky, but you know what I mean? But I really like that maybe it was more scary before.
Sure. That's a good thing to think about too, because it's like, we're over here, where it's like, hey, we gotta protect the youth and make sure that we're not out here damaging anybody or setting parents up for some later on therapy bills or whatever the case is. But these kids are out here. It's like, my kids come home and like, Dad, my friends are watching, Wednesday, like Wednesday Addams or whatever, right? Can we watch that? And I'm just like, no. It's like, we're going to be old school. We're wrapping you in bubble wrap. We're wrapping your brains in bubble wrap for as long as we can, right? So I think there's something to be said where it's like some kids are going to be like, really, that's all you got? You could have ramped it up some. I think for me personally, it was it was a choice of just like, how do we keep this, hopefully with, what's to come in further books. There's, from a craft level, there's a serious concern of, maxing out too quickly. And then if you're in a space where you have to continue to escalate, like for the tone of the books, like where you see the art going and how things, unfold, do you kind of leave yourself no more room to breathe or no more room to go too far in what's to come. So I think there are some sequences in the Radiant Waste for readers who haven't read, the Radiant Waste is this kind of space within the book that the kids are able to travel to eventually, where magic is broken, so weird stuff just happens, like in the landscape, stuff that's like they're not able to explain, that they can kind of interact with, and that means them varying levels of harm and good. So I had a few sequences in there that were a little bit more risky versus oh no, we need to get out of here, and they skedaddle or whatever. So yeah, I think that was like the primary place where it got a little bit different.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about like Keynan's journey, because when the book opens up, he really loves his neighborhood. He loves the nuance of it, and he's very resistant to go to Peerless. And I thought that was an interesting flip of a trope, right? Where these kids really want to go to this school or to like a school. So when you were developing this, were you thinking of I'm going to flip like tropes in this, or were you just letting the story flow? Like, how did it evolve?
Sure. I think it was kind of a mix of both. For Keynan's journey and for his, initial response for Peerless, there was an earlier versions had him a little bit more excited to go, and in a space of being interested in it. Whereas how the story shook out, we were it made a little bit more sense for him to have the initial resistance. I personally love that he has resistance. I think it plays strongly into his character of something that I wanted to examine with him was this idea that Keynan espouses in a lot of different places, that he's got it all together, that his poetry is the best that it's ever going to be, that he is just he has arrived with his with his neighborhood recitals or whatever he's doing when he's back on Busy Block with his among his neighbors. So the idea of him expanding and being pushed into new spaces and having to deal with other forms of writing to have his own writing in a space of critique. I thought that was an interesting place to put him as a character with how closely his writing is intertwined with magic and the consequences that's going to have for the rest of his journey as he realizes, how closely they're intertwined. As far as tropes with, what's out there with magic schools, I've never been the type of writer that's in a space where I'm going to engage with a different work, whether it's something that I adore or whether it's something that's problematic, and say that I want to do something. I'm going to have my writing is going to be a response to that. I respect people that can do that because I've just never had that skill set. What I tried to do with this was just, having the understanding that I do of the tropes that are out there. I wanted to come at it from a different space and examine things from a different angle. And I think the broken magic and then how it intertwines with art was like a really, at least for me, a fresh way to do it. Like, I think there's several books that intertwine arts and magic in a beautiful way, but this, which is the what's going on in the magic system or what's not going on with the magic system in this world, like, allowed me to take it in a really different direction and kind of question from a kid's perspective institutions. I think that's as they get into the nuts and bolts of Peerless, that's one thing that I'm excited to delve into further. Is that when we look at adults, we look at these grown-ups. We look at this place where we're supposed to learn about ourselves and learn about our craft and learn about who we're supposed to be. What happens when that place has its flaws and it's not something where it's it's readily apparent, like straight away. It's like there's something wrong with this place. And so putting kids in a mindset of looking at their environment critically, I think that is my, I don't know. It's terrible as a writer when you're like trying to like push messages. That's my probably not so subtle message for, any young readers of this book.
That's an interesting thought too, because like you have children, right? So how do you think your children has influenced your writing and make you see things? Because like I can only think of, like, for me, my nieces and nephews, and I have a lot at different ages right now, but kids are a lot smarter than what we even think. They're much more insightful and they know a lot more about the world than we give them credit. So how did that inform your writing, or did it?
For the twins, they're a very interesting pair where, they have some of that cute twinsy stuff where they, can finish each other's sentences, and they're, just doing all that stuff that you'd kind of roll your eyes at if you saw it, on a Disney Plus, movie or something. But they do all that stuff, and it's hilarious because it's like genuine. But where they diverge is the fascinating piece. My daughter is has a very justice-oriented personality, concepts of fairness and what's right and what's wrong, like, drive a lot of who she is. My son, we joke about him that we say, how folks will say, oh, that kid has an old soul. For my son, we say this is his first time here. Like, he is fully committed to being a kid. He's like, I'm going to play with these fucking toys. Like, me and my dad, we're going to play. We're going to hop on this Minecraft together. It's like, we're going to enjoy the hell out of all these things. And I am not here to work. I am not here to learn lessons or do homework or anything else that you want me, because that is not enjoyable. So always with selfish author father, like, yes, please children, like, read my books and love them, right? Like, hopefully. And I think they're always going to influence anything that I do, because it's like when we read anything that we're reading, for before bedtime, is you're always in a place of, just you see what the laugh tracks are, right? You see what makes them sit forward. You see what makes my son stop playing with his plushies and like listen to the story or stop pretending to be asleep. So like we won't do another chapter. All those different things is all as writers. It's like you're constantly taking notes on the world around you. So it's there's a part of me that's oh, they laughed at that. I'm as funny as this author. It's like I can manage this kind of sequence or this kind of interaction between characters. So in that regard, I think they always influence the type of work that I want to have. And so going back to my daughter being who she is, works that have a lot of gray that make you challenge your expectations, that make you look at characters that have a lot of layers and really think about how we might be judging characters, right? Because it's like we might be in a space of, particularly with kids, I think it's important to show a lot of nuance and show why characters make their choices and challenge kids, through the fiction with, well, is this person really wrong? If this is why, they're doing X, Y, and Z, can you see, how they got to that point? So having those kinds of pieces and plenty of plot twists and everything is the kind of thing that, I love anyway, but I also know will keep my daughter engaged. And then just like slapstick humor. There's no fart jokes in Keynan. It just wasn't that kind of story, but that would be the kind of stuff where my son would be like locked in. And but I think I've got him hopefully with the kind of the monster fun and then the just kind of general shenanigans and hijinks that are a part of this story and will continue to be with the series.
So I've got 3 kids myself, and what I notice in the shows is when they make their characters overly competent for their age, I felt like the way you built the world and their experiences, everything matched up perfectly. Like what they went through wasn't too much for me, right? I'm like, oh, this is not believable. I don't think they would have handled this situation. You built that up. I'm curious, kind of in the same vein, like, is that from your own experiences and how you grew up or watching your kids? Like, how did you just nail that to where like it made sense?
Oh man, probably just revisions and going back to that, man, going back to community. I think if there's anything I nailed, it's because of the eyes that I've had on this book, like throughout the process, where somebody can come back and say, hey, he sounds a little bit old, or, hey, they kind of solved that a little bit too quickly or too easily. Right. So it's amazing. Like when you have folks around you, that kind of feedback is so priceless because it doesn't stay with you just for that, chapter, that opening or whatever they're reading. It like, if you're doing it right, hopefully it sinks down into your bones. So you're in a space that everything you write after that, you're going to be asking those same questions, that your friends and your editors and everybody else are going to, would pose to you and would challenge you with. So yeah, I think I think that's kind of like an easy thing to fall into. It's like depending on your writing style and how your drafts unfold. There's a part of your brain that you're in conflict with, where your brain is, or I won't put that out there, where my brain is. How do we solve this problem? How do we get to the next chapter? How do we make this scene make sense? And sometimes you have to, short circuit that process and make sure that you're in a space of, maybe this needs to be muddied up. Maybe this is something where we need to let this tension linger and then it's resolved like later on down the line. So just in going through drafts and being in a space where you can finish a piece, step back and look at it, and then like consistently go through it and find that anything that might be that doesn't make sense. Then you can go back and get something that's hopefully feels authentic to like what you're talking about, Nick. So super long answer to your question. I had a lot of help.
Yeah, no, No, I really like it because it is one of those things that like it would throw me off. Like I'm not gonna name no shows or books right now, but like it does throw me off because I see my own kids and I'm like, yo, these are not same. Like my kids they hyper focus on one thing, and like you did that so beautifully. Where it's like, dang, I see my own kids here. Like I love it. LP,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always super interested in like where an idea starts. Like I know that you were working on a YA that you turned in middle grade, but like where were the first strings, the first strains, the first things you kind of pulled together? Like, hey, I think this might be a story.
Oh my God. Man, I'd have to like go back and like look. It's so weird. Sometimes you have stuff that's I don't know, man, where it's like it's how planets coalesce like in a nebula around a star. Like it's just like this weird different bits and pieces. And I'd have to look back. I can talk about media that influenced me. Maybe that'll bring something loose. I think I'd always wanted to have something, and I can't talk about that piece of media because that's a huge spoiler for the story. So never mind. A couple things that were early influences. Jordan Peele with Us had just came out, and what happened with the characters in that movie, and what happened with the world, and what you thought the world was, and then how it turned out to be. Like that was an early influence. I think I've always been a fan of weird magic and just things that are just like not what you would normally see. So another work that had a lot of influence on me was Annihilation, and not the movie, but Jeff Vandermeer's like the book, and just how that level of nonchalant going about the mission, doing this thing, and then there's just like entire this weirdness pops out, and you're just like, what is happening right now? So it's like I think I'm a fan of those kinds of stories, and just that kind of storytelling, like when you're dealing with magic. A lot of what made sense, like when I was building the magic system, I think I was having a lot of like internal conversations with what could make it dynamic and interesting, and kept coming back to the arts. And LP, I don't know if you remember this, but you were like, an early muse when I was figuring out how to incorporate music, like with I think that was like when I was first I did something completely different for this book. Like I wrote like a 30-page treatment, just because I could, and I wanted to nail it right instead of like spinning out of my plot. But I had bounced a lot of ideas off of you, because I was like, how involved do I want to get with this magic system? Because I initially wanted to intertwine it with music. And I was like, he'll be a musician, like he's going to know like answers to these questions. And a lot of that conversation helped steer me in a direction where I was being too rigid with how I was thinking about that interplay of magic. And that's where it kind of like expanded into art. And then the art led into bringing in an art form that I was a little bit closer to, like with spoken word. And then having many moons ago, like not to go back into too many past lives here, but having been a former spoken word artist, that was kind of like an immediate germination point for Keynan of knowing that exhilaration, that sense of sharing, of bleeding on the mic, of like, I got this new piece and I'm dying to share it with the entire world because it's the most amazing thing ever, and I'm the most amazing thing ever, and then somebody can not clap or or you get some hand in the audience or whatever the case is. So there were a lot of different points, and then I think a lot of different stuff that got pulled in along the way. I think this is something that I'm always like, that's always been a blind spot for me, being a cis het dude, is like, what am I doing to make sure that my characters are living in the same kind of community that I live in right now, and that are the community that they should be living in is a default for them. So there was a lot of identity questions, and a lot of internal conversations I was having about gender, thanks to a lot of different influences. And one I will shout out is a conversation with on the and got and yeah, podcasts aren't in like competition, right? I can talk about another podcast and y'all aren't gonna like
please.
cut the.
Please,
I know the answer to that. I'm just being ridiculous. But one of the other podcasts.
Share.
You're right. A bunch of listeners jump ship. God damn it, DaVaun.
Right, we're out.
Run. One of the other podcasts that I'll binge is Deadline City with Danielle Clayton and Zoraida Cordova. And
that's a good one.
It's like, there's so many out there. I don't know. Y'all is like yard work for me, and them is like when I'm on my run. I don't know why that is. It's so weird, but I don't know. I have to.
We'll take yard work. That's good.
Well, I'm sure there's something to be said there, but they had an episode that kind of rocked me with they had a couple, but the one I'm thinking of right now is one where Jason Reynolds was on. And they were kind of ribbing him a little bit about being in a fantasy space and a whole bunch of other stuff that came out of that conversation. But one thing in particular that he said that kind of just like stopped me in my tracks was like, how come there's not a fantasy that's like in verse? And that, like, for what I was trying to do with the magic, it just put an entirely different direction on how I wanted Keynan's voice to come out. And it just really just like, at that point he kind of grabbed the reins of how the story was going to go. And it allows me to do a lot more as magic comes into what he does as an artist. So I hope that answered your question at some point.
in kind of spoiler free, but not spoiler free right now, in the story, I feel like music is very heavily involved, and you were just talking about how to get that involved. And the whole time I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, like, all right, when's it coming? When's it coming? When's it coming? When's it coming? But the love for music and how it's influenced through not only people, but community and things like that, and its storytelling. I just want to know your love for music and things like that, and where you drew your inspiration, and how did you manage to actually weave that into the story without revealing too much about it?
Sure. I think, I got a complicated, well, it's probably not complicated, not as complicated as I think it is, but it's like a convoluted relationship, I think, with music, and particularly with Black music. I think one of the things that really made this story gel for me as the framework, when we have this idea, whether it's the headmaster or Professor Touré, and they're in a space of, trying to educate these kids and show them the ropes about magic and how all their different arts together, like a foundational piece that really made the story sink and helped provide layers for the different characters was hip hop. And so it's like you look at this through, if you look at the story through the lens of this is kind of the origin story of Keynan's hip hop crew, and that they are essentially in a space of putting those pieces together where they have, him and Leah being best friends. She's a dancer. She's a through and through B-girl. There's a point where the professor's like, I see that. And he's basically in the spot of like assembling like what that crew is going to be, with the goal being that it's like when they achieve their final form together, if they can, not bicker and argue and do everything else that kids do along the way, they will be in a space to make something special. When I think about hip hop, it was weird for me. It was funny growing up because, like, going back to the small town, primarily white, it was, if my stepdad was in a weird space where he would, I couldn't watch MTV, so I'd have to go over to my friend's house and watch it. Mm-hmm. So it was like having that relationship where it was something I had to sneak. Like that was a funny layer of, having a core piece of identity for so many of us, regardless of genre, just music, just having to, what kind of music are my folks listening to? Like, what are we into? Like, what is this? And just getting that in like bits and pieces. Another kind of just weird thing for me was like in college, I could not. I'm one of those people that can't study if there's music with words for some reason, and it's like the most annoying thing. And that was something that made me pivot into movie soundtracks of all things. Yeah. So like movie soundtracks, like a nerd about. So God, during that time. So this is, gonna date myself horribly here. Way back in the days of before, Bearshare and Napster and like all this different stuff. Because I was broke as hell in college. I'll be upfront about that. But you could way back in the day. There were people who worked at the different, I would guess, in the studio production departments that would put out bootleg soundtrack CDs like on eBay. And so here's me, with my college credit card, buying this fucking burned, version of what I don't know, like the Matrix or something, whatever movie I was excited about, or Gladiator. Where it's got like 20 tracks. It's got like maybe a track that's like a minute long of Lisa Gerrard, vocalizing. But that was a big core of like my music. Bringing all those different pieces together, it was exciting for me to look at my own background and look at how when I think about music, when I think specifically about hip hop and about what that means, is that it has always been there. And it's like transformational. It is something that it is inviting, and it's always been there for me when I needed it. Like when I was just like figuring stuff out, like I could have a song, a particular song on repeat until I got through like a stage in my life, or got over a breakup, or, figured out how I was going to, pay my next month's rent, or whatever was going on. There were times in life where it's just like you had a soundtrack, and I know for many of you, I'm sure and Brent, I know for sure. And I would, be astonished if there's not, authors and writers out there that don't have a particular soundtrack for a particular book, right? Whereas you got Spotify playlist or whatever the case is. And, I know that there's scenes where I had a track of whatever it was that was just on repeat while I was editing that scene, because it captured the flavor or the intention or the emotion of what needed to happen, and just using that as something that would drive me through like whatever stage I was at with writing. So being in a space where it's like I can, talk about all those things without talking about them, and show a love for, an art form and a lifestyle and a culture that gets, such short shrift in mainstream spaces, or worse, it gets commercialized. It was special to me.
Will, we have a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up.
I wanted to kind of first go back to the way that you layered in the foreshadowing of the music real quick, because since Nick brought it up, and this is actually to Nick's benefit, and I think any writer who is going to read this book needs to look at the way DaVaun foreshadows. So Nick, the way that he's foreshadowing everything, I would look at your novel that you're currently in progress with, because that's what you need to do with your magic system, so I don't keep telling you when's the magic going to happen. So reread those things. Me and Nick have been talking about this all week, so here you go. So anyone who needs help foreshadowing, DaVaun does a really good job of doing it. No, I wanted to point it out to Nick because I was like, listen, think about what books. This was like an ongoing conversation. So I thought it was great.
Look, I can't. I'm not even going to defend myself. DaVaun, your book is inspirational for me, because what you do with certain things, I'm like, oh, hell yeah. Oh, shit, I need to be doing that. So you couldn't have been like scheduling this for the perfect time.
And I don't know if we want to get how spoilery we want to get, because we didn't talk about this to start. But the way that you wrapped the ending up and the foreshadowing in the beginning with the parents was brilliant. So
my God,
go ahead and finish.
God, my feelings were hurt. Yeah. I was destroyed. Destroyed.
I loved it. All right, Brent,
it was good. Okay, so I know that you used to be in the spoken word community pretty heavily before before we met. So how did that actually, because I feel like when I was reading it, I felt like there's like undercurrents of like how that community rolls in terms of, especially in the academy, in terms of like how there's that degree of competitiveness while at the same time still trying to be about the art in it. So I was interested like how, if that played into it at all.
Oh man. Yeah, I think more, spoken word communities are so they're a lot. They're a lot. I didn't LP's laughing like, yeah, you already know. It's, it's funny because I had a lot of different experiences and met some amazing people. I can say that I didn't graft anybody or any particular persona from people that I've met during my time. I think most of where that experience helped me out was just in the love for the craft and being able to put a lot of, so like that part of Keynan is very, very personal to me, and having that that's where a lot where this book felt like coming home. I think it's he has a lot of stuff where he's just like so into his feelings and his poetry is everything, and he's forced to expand, or he has moments where he's, ooh, maybe I could have done that a little bit better. Maybe that rhyme came out like a, kind of like some mumble rap, and it's I've got a situation here because what I was trying to accomplish with the magic just went sideways. So he's in a space where it's like it's not necessarily about about applause or finger snaps or anything like that, but he's having these very real consequences when he, when his rhymes aren't in a space that he thinks they are. So that's a very interesting place for him to be. There's also the dynamic that I love is, the question of this interplay between how much of his rhymes are his rhymes and how much of it is the influence of the magic, and how do those two things like interweave and influence each other, and who's doing what. In my and I'll put this out there too, in my deeply religious days, a phase that I've since transcended from, to kind of go back. It's the only way I can talk about it. It's like, it's always about like, where you're from. And I'm not, just so I'm not just like talking entirely in my head. I spent a lot of time, grew up in a conservative Baptist. That was kind of like my upbringing, and since, had different experiences, different places. The church is a complex place too, but that's an entirely different podcast. I think when spoken word and my relationship with an understanding of divinity and the universe and the Lord and gods and goddesses, when all this was kind of still in like a very formational space, one idea that was very compelling for me was imagining, like, so me as a poet, as a, bleeding on the mic poet, imagining what an experience would be like a garden experience is what I'd call it. Like, walking in that space where everything is quote unquote perfect. And like, what would your conversation be like? Like, how would that look? And for me, it would be like, like everything that you would work with, everything, how you would express yourself, it would be just like this poetic, beautiful thing. And there's instances, and spoiler alerts, so anybody, fast forward or whatever the case is, like maybe a minute. I had a lot of that with Keynan, where he's having these experiences where, this magic, this very potent, sensation and power that he's like learning how to tap into, where he has these things where it's like the poetry is almost taking on a life of its own. It's almost flowing faster than he can say the words. And that for me is like, it's something that I hope I get to explore to the level that I want in subsequent books. Cause there's a few scenes coming up where it's, I get to dive into like what that means for him and what it means for their crew in a very personal way. So yeah, I have the poetry. Like this would have been an entirely different book without any of that experience, because it really his kind of emotional arc, and then where his relationship is at with his art form and with his peers, who understand poetry to some levels, and then some levels are like, okay, he's over here doing his different stuff, and then he's feeling the same way about them with their art. It's like, come on, draw a picture, let's go, or whatever they're doing. They're all having that kind of interplay where they may not experience all the nuances about another art form, but because they're together, as they grow, hopefully, as a crew, they're going to appreciate what each one of them brings to the table. So that's, the intention, and now it's all about execution as we go forward.
Nice. Go ahead, LP.
I'm always interested in the ways in which we teach art and the way that we communicate art, because thinking about hip hop as an art form that for a really long time was not considered an art form because it didn't come from a classical space, right? But you can say the same thing about jazz until, classical people figured out how to math it out and make it work. And they're like, no, you teach mathematical jazz in classical settings. I'm super interested if you have any ideas about like how future stories at the Peerless Academy are going to like address that, like thinking about a B-girl studying classical dance or ballet or tap for that matter, which, have their place in academic studies of that art form, but like they come from a place that is very not that, and can be interpreted in ways that are very not that. So I was curious to see if you have any ideas about like that push and pull of like standardization and innovation, or, authenticity versus appropriation for mass marketing. Wow, that got long. Sorry.
And it might be a good time to talk about the future of the series a bit, what you can too, since we're wrapping up. So
yeah,
everything LP said, and that maybe.
I would need to hit all the notes that you just described, LP, would be probably a substantial amount of research on my side, which I don't know if I'm yet prepared to do. Part of that is very practical. I've been kind of willing it into existence, series. But the truth is that this is a 2-book deal, because the original book that I created was was split in half, and we pitched it as a duology, and then my contract has an option for a third. With everything that's happened with everything that went down with Inkyard last year, and then just kind of like this is the second book. It's in with my new editor now, and it's one of those things where we were looking at a release date, obviously, to keep things going of sometime this year, but that got pushed back to 2025. And then who knows how they're going to feel about a third book. So at that point, I'm going to have a decision to make about continuing on with the series with a different publisher or in some kind of indie format, or possibly resolving in 2 to 3 books. So that's all kind of in the background of all the decisions that are made here, the ugly, grimy business stuff. Ideally, in my heart of hearts, the series is 4 to 5 books, depending on what I get to squeeze out of it. The second book is, I'm going to say it out loud so they can't change it, even though we agreed on it before Inkyard dissolved, was Keynan Masters and the Remixed Monster. So that's the title for number 2.
Oh, I love it.
Keynan Masters and the Turntable of Destiny would be the title for number 3. So that's just out there now, so we can't change it.
It's out.
In regards to how I would I think I would approach that kind of conversation, LP, more from looking at different genres of music. I don't know if so in this world I've created, at some point, if the stars align, the kids would run into different schools that aren't necessarily about hip hop, different schools that have entirely different takes on instrumentation, entirely different ways of how their art engages with magic, or if their art should engage with magic, like how how rigid or loose they should be in their approach versus the foundation that they've learned to be what it is at Peerless. So I hope to have some interesting cultural dynamics there. And to your point, just about the education of it, like I think that's a fascinating ground to explore. It's just a matter of, with my limited musical background, like how successful I could be at doing that. And that's just a conversation we'll find out in the drafts. Try this tournament. There we go. Let's go.
I wasn't trying to give you more homework. I was more thinking. I used dance as an example, but I was more thinking about like spoken word scenes versus like how poetry is taught in school. But
I got you.
Same difference.
Yeah. I think there's definitely I just think with all the subject matter and how it's rolling in the world that I envision, there's plenty of opportunity for extreme differences of opinion and some hilarious clashes and some really solid, we don't rock like that, but we respect the way that you do it. And here's how maybe we could riff together and like have some neat like cypher sessions, as everybody doing their thing. So kind of a Avengers Assemble moment, hopefully, like, but with all the kids doing all their different, kind of having a big jam out.
Man, that sounds awesome.
Sounds ripe for a 10-novel series.
Yeah,
I mean, so somebody wants to pay me, I'm ready.
Manifesting.
Do we want to, Will, Brent, LP, anybody want to throw the last question out, or did you have one more, Will, before we go?
I mean, I had 4 more, but it's okay because we're running over time.
we're way over time already.
To like half the stuff that I wanted to ask. It's just awful.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. This was a great interview. It's just, I just came up with lots of questions. I'm a lot, DaVaun. I don't know what to say. Who wants to ask the last question? I can.
What?
Brent, do you want to? You do it.
Let's let Brent do it.
It's a Brent. I want to ask. Okay. So, last question I guess I would ask is, outside of Keynan, like what is your next big, I guess, project that you're thinking of in the back of your head? Give people something to salivate over in the future.
Oh man.
Because I've read like so many. So me and DaVaun have been on this journey for a long time. So I've read so many books that have yet to actually come out. So yeah. So I just wanted to make people jealous, but maybe also give them an idea of what might be out there soon.
Oh man, I right now it's like I'm in such a weird place with publishing. There's like I've got some middle grade stuff I'm cooking up. I'm finally finishing up an IP project that's going to be out this summer, so I'm excited about that. But it's done. For the next thing, I'm really trying to do a standalone in the middle grade space. So I'll talk about 2 different things. I want to do a standalone. I've got a couple of ideas. One's this I don't know, kind of lighthearted Pixar feel of, I don't know, maybe E.T. meets Monsters Inc. With some shenanigans and school mascots thrown in. So yeah, that pitch needs a lot of work, but that's probably the closest on the plate. Just with the way the market's shaping up too, this is kind of a good time for me to like explore what an adult debut would look like. And I've got an idea for an adult piece that's a little bit of and Brent, I'm sorry, I was laughing when I was like, how can I pitch this? But I'm laughing because this is just, you're just going to like roll your eyes. It's a little bit of China Mayville meets Craft Sequence. So
that's like an easy sell for me.
I know it's like it feels almost like pandering or something. Like I'm just saying, but it's like truthfully, like that's what it is.
I'll take it.
If I stick the landing, And yeah, but that's the kind of wild thing with the industry. It's like there's a lot of projects, between now and then, and some of them that I've known I'm excited about and I can't announce yet, and a lot of stuff like on the editing front too, because that's just a whole different piece of my journey. I see LP shouted out a piece of short fiction. Thank you so much. I'm happy about that short fiction piece. Papa Legba has entered the chat that landed with Fireside, because that was not meant to be its original home. So it's always like a bittersweet piece for me, because we had plans for an LP. But yeah, it's just kind of like really like whatever I get to flow with. I'm working more this year on being kind of more in a flow state with my writing. I'm learning so much about what I can do, what having deadlines stacked on top of deadlines, on top of larger obligations with the magazine, how all that works, and to make sure that I'm not dropping what I can't afford to drop, and then also not like letting folks down. So it's like, yeah, I'm in a weird space, but there's good stuff that's going to come out of this season that I'm excited about, and hopefully people buy it. So we'll all find out together.
Awesome. LP, do you want to, or Will, do you want to ask our last question?
I got it.
All right.
So DaVaun, we just want to know, what just keeps you writing?
I should have had a canned response to this, and now, of course, I don't.
We got him.
Got him.
Got him.
Man, what keeps me writing?
Entire episode.
I know, right?
I'm trying to. It's like my obvious things are the. The kiddos is a huge piece of my life, but they're not going to be kids forever. I think honestly, past that, man, it's just like these stories won't let me go. Like, there's times where I've like tried, just like, hey, I'm done with this, but I, love it, and it's like I can't walk down the street. I can't, I can't go to the gym and train without thinking of a story, or thinking about how a person would be an amazing character, or thinking about journey. Like, it's all, it's so much a part of who I am now. Like, it's like, I don't know if I can turn it off. So that piece of it, for the internal side. For the external piece, the sharing of these stories, right? Just, getting to have a piece of you out there in the world. It's a form of telepathy. I'm not the first person to say that, but I know it's been said before by people who are way smarter than me. I think, when I look particularly at my community, because I think everybody at some point, when they're writing, it's like, that's, whatever at least for me, community and audience is a big piece. And having, how can I say this? Inspiring imagination. I think we're living in a time, with this, I don't know, what do they call it? Like late stage capitalism, how everything feels like a churn, how we're, just a few steps away from being unemployed because AI is coming for all of our work. I think this is kind of our time to shine as, as writers, and show what inspiration and what imagination truly is, outside of having to sell it to somebody so we can eat, outside of pandering to a particular audience or a particular studio, whatever they may be, that I won't say, because I'm hoping that I get to write some IP for them too. All these different things. I still feel like there's a lot of wonder out there that we need to help grow and help flourish, because there's a lot of people that need it, with as much fucked up stuff is going on in the world right now. So yeah, just being a very small part of that, or inspiring or publishing somebody else who is going to go on to have some amazing stories. That's what I'm in the business for.
Awesome. Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us, man, and doing this finally. And we have to do it again, obviously. So
I've loved it, y'all. It's been a blessing. It's been a gift. And I couldn't be more thankful for y'all. Keep doing what you're doing, because it is so needed for all of us. Y'all have been inspirational, and a breath of fresh air for me, and I know that holds time to stand for everybody else in the community. So thank you.
And this has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing. You can find us at justkeepwriting.org. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Feel free to reach out to any of us on our social medias, and please jump in our Just Keep Writing Discord channel. Links to all of that is in the show notes. Lastly, please support our show by going to patreon.com/justkeepwriting. We offer daily writing prompts, early access to podcast episodes, and much more. Thanks for listening, and just keep writing.